The ballroom at Lancaster House was silent, suffocating under the weight of expectation. Everyone knew the Iron Earl, Lord Alistair Blackwood, had to choose a wife tonight. He was a man made of marble and calculation, and his choice would be a political one. But when he bypassed the glittering heiresses, the daughters of dukes, and stopped before the penniless companion, trembling in the shadows, the world stopped. He made his cold proposal, a declaration that shocked the ton to its core. But the real shock, it came when he leaned in, and in a whisper no one else could hear, spoke the one name that unravelled everything. The London season of 1851 was ablaze with talk of the great exhibition, but tonight all of society was crammed into the Lancaster House ballroom for a different kind of spectacle. Alistair Blackwood, the 10th Earl of Harding, was present, and he was expected to choose a bride. At 29, Lord Harding was known as the Iron Earl. He had inherited a title 3 years prior from a distant, profligate cousin, and had spent every day since dragging the crumbling estate back from the brink of ruin. He was dangerously handsome, but his face was a mask of cold control. He did not smile. He did not charm. He calculated. In the alcove, hidden behind a large fern, Seraphina Croft tried to make herself invisible. As the paid companion to the Earl's own aunt, the formidable Lady Honoria, Seraphina was allowed to attend, but she was not part of the glittering display. She was a ghost in grey muslin, her only valuable asset the quick mind that Lady Honoria prized for games of chess and reading the papers aloud. Seraphina watched the Earl. He moved through the crowd with a chilling economy of motion. Every debutante he passed, like Lady Beatrice, the diamond of the season, tensed with a mixture of hope and terror. "He looks like he's appraising horseflesh," Seraphina murmured to her aunt. "Better that than a moon-eyed poet." "Child," Lady Honoria sniffed, tapping her cane. "Sentiment is a currency for fools. Alistair is no fool." Then the music stopped. The Earl stood in the centre of the room. A hush fell, so deep Seraphina could hear the nervous click of Lady Beatrice's fan. "Your Graces, my lords." "Ladies," Alistair's voice cut through the silence, deep and devoid of warmth. "I am aware of the expectations placed upon me. The Harding estate requires an heir. My time has been consumed by matters of business, but I concede it is time to secure the line." This was it. Lady Beatrice's mother physically pushed her daughter forward half an inch. Alistair's grey eyes, cold as the North Sea, scanned the room. He did not look at the debutantes. He did not look at the wealthy American heiresses. His gaze moved past them, over the dowagers, and into the shadows of the alcove. He found Seraphina. Her heart didn't leap. It seized. It was a predator's gaze, and she was the rabbit. He began to walk. He walked past Lady Beatrice, whose face went stark white. He walked past the daughters of marquises and viscounts. He walked until he stood directly in front of the fern, in front of the dowager and her paid companion. Seraphina's blood turned to ice. She could feel the stares of 300 people burning into her back. "Miss Croft," he said. His voice was not loud, but it carried to every corner. Seraphina could only manage a terrified curtsy. "My lord, you are of passable breeding, I am told. You are educated. You are healthy. You are not, I believe, prone to hysterics." A low, horrified murmur rippled through the room. This was not a proposal, it was an inventory. "My lord, I don't understand," Seraphina whispered, her face crimson. "You will," he stated. He turned, not just to her, but to the entire assembly. "I have made my decision. I will take Miss Seraphina Croft as my wife. The banns will be read this Sunday." The silence that followed was not quiet. It was a roar of disbelief, of scandal, of outrage. Lady Beatrice actually swayed, held up by her mother. Seraphina's own patron, Lady Honoria, looked for the first time in her life, utterly speechless. Alistair Blackwood, the Iron Earl, had just proposed to a penniless nobody. Seraphina felt the room tilt. She was going to faint. Before she could fall, the Earl's hand shot out, his fingers closing around her elbow in a grip of steel. He pulled her upright, closer to him. The proximity was dizzying. He smelled of winter air and starch. His face was still a public mask of indifference. But as the crowd erupted into a cacophony of whispers, he leaned down, his lips brushing the shell of her ear. The warmth of his breath was a shocking contrast to his reputation. And he whispered 5 words that broke her world apart. "Sarah, it's me. It's Ali." Seraphina's vision tunneled. The roaring in her ears was not the ton anymore. It was the sound of her own past, crashing into the present. Sarah. No one had called her that in 12 years. Ali, Alistair Blackwood, the Iron Earl, did not exist. In his place stood a dirty-faced boy with clever grey eyes, climbing the orphanage wall, a stolen apple in his hand. "Ali," she breathed, so low it was just a movement of her lips. His grip on her elbow tightened, a warning. "Straighten your spine, Miss Croft," he said, his public voice returning. "You are to be a countess. Do not swoon." He did not release her. He turned, his hand still clamped on her arm, and began to plough a path through the stunned crowd, pulling her in his wake. They were a battleship and a dinghy, tied together in an unnatural, shocking union. The whispers followed them like sparks from a fire. Penniless companion? Must be his mistress. Blackmail, surely. Insulted Lady Beatrice? Seraphina felt her face burn, but the Iron Earl's pace never faltered. He didn't stop until they were in the cold night air, where his private carriage, emblazoned with the Harding crest, waited. He bundled her inside, snapped Harding Hall, now, at the driver, and slammed the door, plunging them into the dark, swaying carriage. She stared at him. The man opposite her was a stranger. This Lord Harding was dressed in immaculate black, his signet ring heavy on his finger. He was broad-shouldered, hard-edged, and radiated an aura of command that was terrifying. The boy she knew, Ali, had been wiry, fast, and always half-starving. They had met at the Foundling Hospital in London, a place of grim charity and numbered children. She was Sarah, was 712. He was Ali, was 698. They were each other's only family, sharing scraps of bread and vowing to find their real families one day. When she was 12 and he was 14, a carriage had come. Not for her, for him. A stern-looking man had claimed him, said he was the distant, long-lost nephew of some country gentleman. Ali had grabbed her hand, promised he would come back for her, that he'd find her. He never did. Seraphina had been placed in service, eventually ending up with the sharp-witted Lady Honoria. The boy Ollie, the only person she had ever loved, had vanished. "How?" she finally choked out, her voice trembling in the dark. The rigid mask of the Earl finally cracked. He slumped back against the velvet, rubbing a hand violently over his face. When he looked at her again, the coldness was gone, replaced by a deep, weary pain that she recognized instantly. "Sarah," he said, his voice raw. "I never stopped looking. By the time I had any power, you were gone. Your service contract was sold. The trail was cold. I only found you 6 months ago." 6 months? She whispered, horrified. "You've known where I was for 6 months? Working for your aunt?" "Yes," he said, and the coldness returned, but it was directed at the world, not at her. "I found you as the companion to Lady Honoria. I arranged to be at her card parties, her dinners, just to see you, to make sure you were safe. But you never spoke to me. You looked through me. The accusation was bitter. I had to, he hissed, leaning forward. Do you have any idea what this world is? I am not Orley, the boy from the orphanage. I am the Earl of Harding, and I am surrounded by sharks. The moment I showed interest in you, you would have been ruined, eaten alive. They would have assumed the worst, and you would have been dismissed, cast out. The carriage hit a rut, throwing her forward. He caught her, his hands on her shoulders. His face was inches from hers. I inherited a title, Sarah, not a fortune. I inherited a mountain of debt, a collapsing roof, and a line of creditors. My cousin, the man I inherited from, was a monster. He left nothing but rot. So, the proposal? She asked, her heart sinking. The coldness, that was real? The proposal was an act of war, he said, his voice grim. And I have just dragged you into the middle of it. The carriage pulled up to Harding Hall, a massive, imposing townhouse that, even in the moonlight, looked more like a mausoleum than a home. Alistair led her not to a grand drawing room, but to a small, functional study. A single lamp lit a desk, piled high with ledgers. The room was cold. Please, he said, gesturing to a chair, his voice losing the raw emotion from the carriage, the Earl's mask sliding back into place. Sit. I will not feed you lies, Sarah. You deserve the truth. It is not pretty. She sat, folding her hands in her lap to stop their shaking. You said it was an act of war. Against whom? He walked to the window, staring out at the dark London street. A man named Lord Mortimer. Geoffrey Mortimer. He is a neighbour in the country. He is also the man who holds the mortgages on nearly every acre of Harding land. Seraphina's blood ran cold. She knew that name. Mortimer was a visitor at Lady Honoria's, a man with wet, assessing eyes who had cornered her more than once by the tea tray, his compliments too familiar, his hand brushing her arm too often. She had complained to no one, knowing it would be her word against his. My cousin, Alistair continued, was a gambler and a fool. He borrowed sums I cannot even comprehend from Mortimer, using the land, the house, even the family portraits as collateral. For 3 years I have been holding him at bay. But the final note is due. In 1 month I must pay him £50,000, or he seizes everything. 50,000, Seraphina whispered. It was an impossible sum. I have sold everything that wasn't entailed. I have lived like a monk. But I am still thousands short. He turned to face her. But there is a loophole. My grandmother, a very wise woman, distrusted my side of the family. She left a separate trust. A very large one. But it is locked. The terms are explicit. I cannot touch a shilling of it until the day I am legally married. Seraphina finally understood. You need a wife. I need a wife, he confirmed, his face grim. Quickly. And I need one who will not betray me. Mortimer knew about the trust. He has been parading his own daughter in front of me all season. He expected me to propose to her, to fold my debt into his family, to be owned by him. And Lady Beatrice? She was the Tun's choice, another political alliance. But her father, the Duke of Ashworth, would have demanded settlements, contracts. It would have taken months. Time I do not have. He finally looked at her, his grey eyes searching her face. I was running out of options, Sarah. And then, I saw Mortimer watching you at my aunt's last week, the way he looks at you. Alistair's hands clenched into fists. I realized he doesn't just want my land. He wants you too. He thinks because you are a companion, you are available, If he takes my estate, he becomes the most powerful man in the county. He would have pursued you, and you would have had no one to protect you." The room was silent. "So you proposed to me," Seraphina said, the pieces fitting together with horrifying clarity. "To get your money, and to protect me." "It is a business arrangement," he said, his voice flat. "That is why the proposal was so cold, so public. It was a message to Mortimer. It was a transaction. You are not a debutante I am courting. You are a woman I am claiming. By marrying you, I checkmate him. I gain access to the trust, I pay the debt, and I place you under my protection as Countess of Harding, where he can never, ever touch you." "A business arrangement," she repeated, the words tasting like ash. The boy who promised to come back for her was offering her a contract. "Sarah, look at me." He crossed the room and knelt in front of her, taking her cold hands in his. This was not the Earl. This was Ollie. "This is not the life I promised you at the orphanage wall. It's a cage, a gilded one, but a cage nonetheless. I am offering you my name, my protection, and a life of comfort. You will be a countess. You will want for nothing." "And what do I give you?" she asked, her voice small. "Your name on a piece of paper," he said quietly. "And your trust. I will never ask for more than you are willing to give, Sarah. I swear it. This will be a marriage in name only, unless you decide otherwise. But I am offering you a shield. Will you take it?" She looked into his eyes, the eyes of the boy who had once taken a beating for her when she broke a plate. He was offering her a prison to save her from a monster. "And what if I say no?" His face hardened. "Then I am ruined, and I cannot protect you from Mortimer when I am a pauper. He will have his prize." She saw the trap. It was absolute. He had locked her in with him. Seraphina Croft, the companion, took a deep breath. "I will be your shield, Alistair," she said, using his name for the first time. "If you will be mine." He closed his eyes for a moment in relief. "It is done. We marry in 1 week." He stood up, the Earl once more. "Now, we must plan. The Ton just declared war on you. We have to teach you how to fight back." The next morning, the London papers were brutal. They didn't dare attack the Iron Earl, so they aimed their venom at his choice. Seraphina was painted as a low-born adventuress, a schemer, a grey mouse with a steel trap. Lady Beatrice was the victim, a swan pushed aside by a crow. Seraphina read the columns in Lady Honoria's breakfast room, her stomach churning. "Well," Lady Honoria said, snapping the Morning Post shut, "you've certainly made an impression." "They hate me," Seraphina murmured. "They don't hate you," the old woman corrected, pointing her toast. "They hate being surprised. Alistair just upended their entire, predictable world, and you are the symbol of it. Are you going to cry about it?" "No, Lady Honoria." "Good. Now, drink your tea. We have work to do. Alistair may have given you his name, but I will give you his armor. You are to be my niece by marriage, and I will not have you looking like a frightened scullery maid." For the next 6 days, Seraphina's life was a blur of fittings, lessons, and excruciating social trials. Lady Honoria was a merciless general. "Stop slouching, girl. You are not a servant asking for scraps. You are a countess. Enter a room as if you own it. No, not that color. You have intelligent eyes. Wear the sapphire. It makes you look calculating. When Lady Beatrice's mother insults you, and she will, you do not respond. You simply look at her, raise one eyebrow, and ask her if she is feeling well. It implies madness, and there is no counterattack to that." The hardest part was Alistair. He visited daily, but he was always the Earl. He brought her jewels, the Harding emeralds, and discussed the wedding as if it were a military maneuver. "We will be married at St. George's, Hanover Square," he said, naming the most fashionable public church in London. "It must be public. It must be official. Mortimer must see that it is unbreakable." There were no stolen touches, no shared smiles of their childhood. He was cold, distant, and focused. She was his partner in a conspiracy, nothing more. The loneliness was worse than when she was a companion. The night before the wedding, they attended a mandatory ball. It was their first public appearance as an engaged couple. The moment they entered, the music stuttered. Lady Beatrice, dressed in virginal white, approached them. "Lord Harding," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "And Miss Croft. How charming. You must tell me, Miss Croft, whatever did you do to convince my father's tailor to part with that muslin? It is almost passable." The crowd around them tittered. Seraphina felt the familiar heat of shame. Before she could respond, Alistair's hand rested on the small of her back, a simple gesture of possession that silenced the crowd. "Lady Beatrice," Alistair said, his voice lethally soft, "are you implying my future countess is wearing muslin?" Seraphina, recalling her lessons, resisted the urge to look down. The dress was, in fact, a heavy silk satin from the most expensive modiste in Paris, paid for by Lady Honoria. Seraphina looked up at Lady Beatrice, tilted her head, and raised one eyebrow. "Lady Beatrice," she said, her voice clear and carrying, "you look quite flushed. Are you feeling quite well?" Beatrice's smile froze. The ton gasped. Lady Honoria, watching from the sidelines, gave a single sharp nod of approval. But the victory was short-lived. A new voice, smooth and oily, cut in. "Alistair, my boy, and the lovely bride." Lord Mortimer. He was a large man, his waistcoat straining, his eyes small and assessing. He bowed over Seraphina's hand, holding it a moment too long. "Miss Croft, you have stolen our iron, Earl. What a coup! I must say I am devastated." "You hide it well, Mortimer," Alistair said, stepping slightly in front of Seraphina. "Oh, I am." "Truly," Mortimer smiled, but his eyes were cold. "You see, I had so hoped we would be family. I was so looking forward to merging our assets. But as you have made your choice, I suppose I must revert to business." He pulled a folded paper from his jacket. "A wedding present. A notice, Harding. The final one. £50,000. You have 1 week from today, or the bailiffs will be at Harding Hall the day after your honeymoon." "A pity." He bowed, his eyes lingering on Seraphina. "Countess." He walked away, leaving them in a circle of icy silence. The public humiliation was complete. He had just announced to the entire ton that the Earl of Harding was a pauper. Seraphina watched Alistair's face. It was pure marble. He did not flinch. "The wedding," he said, "is moved to tomorrow morning." They were married at 9 in the morning at St. George's, Hanover Square. It was not a celebration. It was a surrender. The church was nearly empty, save for Lady Honoria and a few of Alistair's nervous-looking lawyers. Seraphina wore the Harding emeralds. As Alistair slid the cold, heavy gold band onto her finger, she felt not joy, but the snap of a lock. She was Lady Harding. She was the shield. They returned to Harding Hall in silence. Alistair went immediately to the study with his men. "The bank must be notified. The transfer from the trust must begin immediately." "It will take 3 days for the funds to clear, my lord," a lawyer said, wringing his hands. "Lord Mortimer knew this. His demand gives us no room for error." "Then do not make one," Alistair snapped. For 2 days, Seraphina wandered the cold, grand house. She was its mistress, but she was a prisoner. Alistair was a ghost, locked in the study. She knew he was fighting for their survival, but the boy, Ali, was gone completely, replaced by the Iron Earl, and she was desperately, terribly alone. On the third day, Alistair emerged. His face was pale, his eyes shot with red. "It is done," he said. "The funds are cleared. I can pay him." A wave of relief so profound it made Seraphina dizzy washed over her. "Alistair, it's over." He looked at her, and for a second, a small, tired smile touched his lips. "It's over, Sarah. We're safe." It was the first time he had used her name since the carriage. She took a step toward him, her hand half raised. The knocker on the front door echoed through the hall like a gunshot. A footman appeared, looking terrified. "My lord, it's Lord Mortimer, and he has 2 men with him. They look like bailiffs." "What?" Alistair stormed past her. "The payment is not due for 4 more days. Get him out!" "It's no use, my boy," Mortimer's voice boomed from the foyer. He strode in, flanked by 2 grim-faced men. "I'm not here for that debt." Alistair froze. "What new game is this, Mortimer?" "No game at all. A simple legality. You see, I was so busy looking at your grandmother's trust, I neglected to check your cousin's other obligations." Mortimer produced another document with a flourish. "This, Harding, is a marriage contract. Signed by your cousin, the previous Earl, and my late sister, God rest her soul. A contract promising her his hand, and in the event of his failure to marry her, a forfeiture of the entire estate to my family." Alistair's lawyer snatched the paper. He read it, his face turning grey. "My lord, this is genuine. It's dated 5 years ago. Your cousin never married her. He died. The debt, it transfers with the title. It's ironclad." "The 50,000 was just interest." Mortimer smiled, his eyes glinting. This is the principle. The house, the land, the very name. It's all mine." "This is invalid," Alistair roared. "Why wait until now?" "I had to wait until you had money," Mortimer laughed. "Your cousin was bankrupt. You were bankrupt. What good was collecting? But then, you married. You accessed the trust. You are, for the first time, wealthy. And now, I will take all of it. The trust, the land, everything. You are ruined, Harding. Utterly." Alistair looked defeated. The fight had gone out of him. He had won, only to find a landmine waiting at the finish line. "Unless," Mortimer said, his gaze sliding to Seraphina, "we can come to an arrangement." He stepped toward Seraphina. "The house is magnificent. It needs a woman's touch. As a new widower, I find myself in need of a hostess. Your marriage, Alistair, is a day old. It could be annulled. Quietly. No one would blame you for setting aside a companion to save your legacy. Send her to me. I will be generous, and I will tear this contract up." Alistair, who had been staring at the floor, slowly raised his head. The air in the hall dropped 20 degrees. He was no longer the Earl. He was not Ali. He was something else. Something truly dangerous. "Get out," Alistair whispered. "I am offering you a way out." "You put a price on my wife," Alistair said, his voice a low, lethal vibration. "You stand in my home, and you try to buy my wife." He advanced on Mortimer, who, for the first time, looked afraid. "There is no price. There is no deal. You will not have my land. You will not have my name. And you will never speak to my wife again. Now get out of my house before I kill you with my bare hands." "You are a fool," Mortimer shrieked, backing away. "You'll be in the street. The bailiffs will be here by noon tomorrow." Mortimer and his men fled. Alistair stood in the centre of the hall, shaking, not with fear, but with a rage so profound it scared her. He turned to Seraphina, his face a mask of agony. "Sarah," he choked out, "he's right. I'm ruined. I've dragged you into hell." He sagged against a pillar. "You must leave. I'll have the marriage annulled. You can go back to my aunt. I release you." He had given up. The Iron Earl had shattered. Seraphina stared at the man she had just married. He was offering her an escape. The boy from the orphanage would have fought. The Earl was beaten. But she was no longer Seraphina Croft, the companion. She was Lady Harding, and she was angry. "No," she said. Alistair looked up, confused. "What?" "No, I will not run. I will not go back to your aunt. And I will not have my marriage annulled. You said this was a partnership. You said I was your shield. Very well, let me be one." "Sarah, you don't understand. The contract is legal. It's over." "You are a man," Seraphina said, walking toward him, her voice gaining strength. "You think in terms of contracts, debts, and duels. I am a woman. I think in terms of secrets. Mortimer is arrogant, and arrogant men make mistakes. Where are the estate papers?" "In the study, but—" "Show me," she commanded. For the next 10 hours, the study was a whirlwind of paper. Seraphina, with her methodical mind, was not looking at the ledgers. Alistair and his lawyers had already done that. She was looking at the personal correspondence, diaries, letters, invitations. Who was this cousin? She asked. Horace Blackwood, a vile man, drank himself to death. And Mortimer's sister? The one he was contracted to marry? Lavinia. She died of a fever 3 years ago. Never married. Seraphina worked. Alistair, seeing the fire in her, began to work with her. The sun rose. They were covered in dust, their faces grim. "It's no use," Alistair said, dropping a heavy diary. "It's all hunting logs and gambling debts." "Wait," Seraphina said. She held up a thin, leather-bound book. It wasn't the Earl's diary. It was a household accounts book, kept by the previous Earl's mother. She scanned the pages. Groceries, new livery, travel expenses. Here. Travel to London for Mr. Horace, $10. Travel to London, $10. Every month for a year, 5 years ago, the same year as Mortimer's contract. He was visiting Lavinia, solidifying the match, Alistair said, rubbing his eyes. "No," Seraphina said, her voice electric. "Look at the dates. He went to London, but the contract was signed in the country. And look at this." She pointed to an entry. "Stays for Mr. Horace at the Swan, with 2 necks, London. A common coaching inn. Not a townhouse. Not a hotel. Why would the Earl of Harding stay at a common inn? I don't know. Because he wasn't visiting a lady," Seraphina said, her mind racing. "He was visiting someone else. Someone unsuitable. Sarah, this is a distraction. The bailiffs will be here in hours. Alistair, call Lady Honoria. She knows everything about everyone." 2 hours later, Lady Honoria was in the study, sipping tea amidst the chaos. Seraphina showed her the ledger. Lavinia Mortimer. Lady Honoria sniffed. "Dull girl. Plain as a pike." She looked at the inn's name. "A coaching inn? Ridiculous. Horace Blackwood was a monster, but he had taste. He wouldn't keep a mistress at an inn." "Then who?" Seraphina pressed. Lady Honoria paused. "There was a rumour, years ago, that Horace had an entanglement with a barmaid from, what was it? The White Hart in his local village. The girl vanished. Everyone assumed Mortimer paid her off to clear the way for his sister, Lavinia." Seraphina and Alistair looked at each other. "Get me the carriage," Seraphina said. "Where are you going?" Alistair demanded. "To church," Seraphina said, grabbing her bonnet. "You check the inns. I'm checking the marriage registers." She raced to St. George's, Hanover Square, the very church where she was married, but she didn't stop there. She went to the smaller, less fashionable parishes. For hours she hunted. And then, in the dusty registry of a small church in Marylebone, she found it. Horace Blackwood and Mavis Poole, the barmaid. They had married. 6 months before he signed the marriage contract with Lavinia Mortimer, Horace Blackwood had been a bigamist. The contract with Lavinia was illegal. It was worthless. The knocker on the great oak door of Harding Hall did not sound like a polite request for entry. It was a single, imperious crack that echoed through the vast, silent foyer like a gunshot. Alistair, who had been pacing the study, froze. Seraphina, standing by the cold fireplace, closed her eyes for a brief second. They had been waiting. For 3 hours since the first light of dawn, they had been waiting, the copies of the parish records resting on the desk between them like a loaded pistol. A footman, new to the household and pale with terror, appeared at the study door. "My lord," he stammered, his voice trembling. "It is Lord Mortimer. He is not alone. He has 2 men with him. And Lady Beatrice and her mother," Alistair finished, his voice devoid of all emotion. He had seen them pull up from the study window. "He has brought an audience to watch the execution. Let them in, Thomas. Let them all in. My lord? You heard me? Open the doors. Let them into the main drawing room. My wife, and I will be down presently." The footman nodded and fled. Seraphina looked at Alistair. His face was a mask of carved granite, but she could see the pulse beating in his jaw. He was not the Iron Earl. He was not the boy Orley. He was a man bracing for an impact that could shatter them both. "Sarah," he said, his voice low. "This may not work. His arrogance, he may simply tear the paper up and laugh. The word of a barmaid against a peer of the realm." "He won't," Seraphina said. She picked up the papers. Her hand was perfectly steady. "He is a bully, Alistair, and bullies are, at their core, cowards. He has come here to perform. We will simply provide a better show." She turned and walked out of the study. He watched her go, a strange, profound sense of trust settling over him. He had spent his life controlling everything. Now, in the final hour, he was putting his entire world into the hands of the one person he had abandoned 12 years ago. He followed her. They reached the top of the grand staircase, just as Lord Mortimer and his entourage were sweeping into the centre of the hall. Mortimer was in his element. He was loud, expansive, his face flushed with victory. The 2 bailiffs, grim-faced and solid, stood behind him like twin bulldogs. And then there were the ladies. The Duchess of Ashworth, mother to Lady Beatrice, held her lorgnette to her eyes, peering at the furnishings with a look of undisguised contempt. Lady Beatrice herself, dressed in a confection of pale blue, looked like a cat who had not only found the cream, but was preparing to bathe in it. They were here to witness the final, delicious humiliation of the grey mouse who had dared to steal the Earl. "Alistair, my boy!" Mortimer boomed, spotting them on the landing. He spread his hands in a gesture of false sympathy. "A sad day, a very sad day. But business is business. I am a man of my word, and the contract is clear." He turned to the bailiffs. "Gentlemen, do your work. Start with the portraits. I find the ancestors oppressive. Especially," he added, pointing to a grand portrait of Alistair's grandmother. "That one. The one with the trust. A bitter irony, is it not?" One of the bailiffs made a move toward the painting. Wait. The word was not loud. It was not a shout, but it sliced through Mortimer's booming voice and stopped the bailiff in his tracks. Seraphina stood at the top of the landing. She was not the companion. She was not the frightened girl from the orphanage. She was a vision of ice and power. She wore the deep sapphire silk, a dress that seemed to drink the light in the dim hall. At her throat, the Harding emeralds glittered, not as decoration, but as a breastplate. Her hair was up, severe and elegant. She looked every inch the Countess. Mortimer's smile faltered, replaced by a sneer of irritation. "Madam, this is unpleasant. I suggest you retire to your chambers and pack. This is the business of men." He waved a dismissive hand. "Go on, my dear. You won't be needing any of the fineries. Go." Lady Beatrice tittered, a nasty little sound. "Do be quick, Lady Harding. I'm sure your old grey muslin is waiting for you." Seraphina ignored her. She began to descend the stairs, one slow, deliberate step at a time. Her hand did not tremble on the polished banister. Her gaze never left Mortimer's face. Alistair and Lady Honoria, who had slipped into the hall to watch from an alcove, both watched her. She was a general, advancing on the field. When she reached the bottom step, she stopped. She was now on a level with Mortimer, and she did not look away. "You have come to claim this house, Lord Mortimer," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "You have come based on a supposed contract of marriage between the late 9th Earl, Horace Blackwood, and your sister, the late Lavinia Mortimer." "Supposed?" Mortimer blustered. "It is a legal writ, madam. Signed, sealed, and witnessed. It is my right." "It is," Seraphina said, her voice dangerously calm. "A piece of paper. Nothing more. Because the contract upon which it is based is, and always has been, utterly fraudulent." The silence that fell was absolute. The Duchess's lorgnette clattered from her fingers. Lady Beatrice's jaw fell open. The bailiffs looked at each other, confused. Alistair took a single step, standing just behind Seraphina's shoulder. He said nothing. He didn't need to. Mortimer's face went from flushed to purple. "Fraudulent? What? What nonsense is this? What trick are you playing, you little adventuress?" He rounded on Alistair. "Harding, control your wife. She is hysterical. This is a desperate, pathetic lie." "Is it?" Seraphina asked. She held up the papers she was carrying. "I spent last night, Lord Mortimer, in the parish registries of London. It is amazing what one can find when one is not blinded by one's own arrogance." She stepped directly in front of him, so close he was forced to look down at her. "I have here," she said, "a certified copy of a marriage certificate from the parish of St. Marylebone. It is dated March 4th, 1846. She paused, letting the date sink in. "That date, as you well know, is 6 months before your sister's pathetic contract was ever signed." Mortimer's eyes widened. He knew. In that instant, she saw it. He knew. "The certificate," Seraphina continued, her voice like a judge's gavel, "details the marriage of Horace Blackwood, the 9th Earl of Harding, to a Miss Mavis Poole." She let the name hang in the air. "A barmaid," she added, her voice dripping with contempt. "From the White Hart Inn, in your own county, a girl I am sure you remember." The Duchess of Ashworth gasped. "A barmaid?" "Horace Blackwood was already married when he signed your paper, Lord Mortimer," Seraphina declared, her voice rising. "He was a bigamist. Your contract, your claim, your entire scheme is void. It is illegal. It is worthless. You have no claim on this house. You have no claim on this land. You have no claim on anything. A forgery!" Mortimer roared, his face a mask of terror and rage. It's a lie, a trick. You, witch! You faked it!" He lunged, not at Alistair, but at Seraphina, his hand clawing for the papers. He never reached her. Alistair moved with a speed that was terrifying. He grabbed Mortimer's outstretched wrist, his fingers clamping down like a steel trap. A wet crunch echoed in the hall as bones ground together. Mortimer shrieked as a high-pitched sound of pure agony. "You will not," Alistair snarled, his voice a low, lethal whisper. "Touch my wife." He violently shoved Mortimer back. The larger man stumbled, clutching his broken wrist, his face ashen with pain and shock. "Speak, Seraphina," Alistair commanded, his eyes never leaving the whimpering peer. "A forgery, Lord Mortimer?" Lady Honoria's dry, cutting voice emerged from the alcove. She stepped out, tapping her ebony cane. "I thought you might say that. You are, if anything, terribly predictable." "You!" Mortimer spat, cradling his arm. "Me," Honoria agreed, her eyes glittering. "I too have been busy this morning. While my niece, the Countess, was dealing with dusty legalities, I was dealing with people. I sent my own runner to the White Hart Inn. And guess who we found, living in a small, clean cottage not 2 miles away? A cottage, I might add, paid for by a mysterious benefactor for the last 5 years. Mortimer's breathing was shallow. He was trapped. "Mavis Poole," Seraphina said, stepping forward again. "Now Mavis Blackwood." "Precisely," Lady Honoria continued. "She and her son. Horace's legitimate son, I might add. A charming boy. He has the Blackwood eyes. A bit unrefined, but that can be fixed." This was a new bomb. Alistair went rigid. He looked at Seraphina, who met his gaze. She knew. She had known when she told him. She wasn't just saving the estate. She was revealing the truth, no matter the cost. Mortimer was no longer just defeated. He was annihilated. And Mavis, Lady Honoria savoured the word, is quite happy to testify. She kept everything. She has the original marriage certificate. And even better, she has letters. Mortimer stopped breathing. "Letters," Honoria said, tapping her cane in time with her words. "From you, Lord Mortimer. Letters from 5 years ago. Letters admitting you knew perfectly well about her marriage to the Earl. Letters offering her a substantial, and frankly vulgar, sum of money to disappear. To take her child and vanish, so your sister Lavinia could make her match with a man you knew was already married." Seraphina stepped up to Mortimer again, her eyes blazing with cold fire. "That isn't just fraud, Lord Mortimer. That is conspiracy, blackmail, suborning a witness." Alistair, who had been processing the catastrophic, liberating news about his own title, spoke. His voice was cold stone. "And it carries a sentence of transportation to Australia. For life." Mortimer was broken. He looked at Alistair. He looked at Seraphina, this penniless girl who had dismantled his entire life in one morning. He saw no mercy. He saw only justice. The Duchess of Ashworth, realizing she had publicly allied herself with a ruined criminal, tried to backpedal. We had no idea," she shrieked, grabbing her daughter's arm. "This is shocking. Lord Mortimer, you are a monster. We are appalled." Lady Honoria let out a short, dry laugh. "Save it, Duchess. Your presence here, like a vulture at a hanging, speaks for itself. You are finished. You tied your wagon to a criminal. The ton will have you for breakfast. You will be a laughing stock by tea time." The Duchess's face crumpled. She yanked her daughter, and the two of them scurried out of the hall like frightened rats. The bailiffs, who were now witnesses to a major crime, looked at Alistair. The elder one touched his forelock. "My lord, begging your pardon. We were hired on a writ we were told was legal. This This is a criminal matter. We'll be on our way, and we'll be making a full report to Bow Street." Mortimer heard Bow Street. The last of his bravado shattered. With a desperate sob, he clutched his broken wrist and ran. He shoved the remaining footman aside and stumbled out of the great doors, a ruined, fleeing coward. The hall was suddenly, profoundly silent. The threat was gone. The estate was safe. Serafina looked at Alistair. He was pale, but not in defeat. He was in shock, staring at the empty doorway. "Alistair," she said softly. He turned to her. His grey eyes, which she had only ever seen as iron or ice, were now wide and unreadable. "You knew," he stated. It was not a question. When you found the certificate, you knew what it meant, that Horace had a son, a legitimate son. "Yes," Serafina said. Her voice was quiet, but didn't waver. "I knew." "I am not the Earl of Harding," he said. The words sounded strange, foreign in the grand hall of his ancestors. "No," she agreed, her heart hammering. "It seems you are not." He stared at her. She had saved him from Mortimer, but she had taken his entire identity. She braced herself for the anger, for the coldness to return, for him to accuse her of ruining him in a different, more profound way. Lady Honoria broke the silence, her voice pragmatic. "Well, this is a pickle. You, Alistair, are apparently Mr. Alistair Blackwood, and you, girl, are Mrs. Blackwood, and there is a small, uneducated boy in a cottage who is, by rights, the 10th Earl of Harding, a fascinating morning's work." Alistair was silent for a long, agonizing moment. He walked past Serafina, past his aunt, to the tall window overlooking the square. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass. Serafina's heart broke. He had wanted the title. He had fought for it, killed himself for it, married her for it. And she had just taken it from him. Then his shoulders began to shake. Serafina's stomach dropped. Was he weeping? He turned around, and he was laughing. It was not a hysterical laugh. It was a laugh of pure, unadulterated, shocking relief. A real, genuine laugh that transformed his entire face, chasing the shadows from his eyes. "The Iron Earl," he said, wiping a tear from his eye. "What a fraud. A title built on a bigamist's lie, passed to me on a technicality. I have spent 3 years, killing myself to save... What? A name that isn't even mine? A house that doesn't belong to me?" He crossed the room to Serafina. He stopped in front of her, and for the first time, she saw the boy from the orphanage, free and unburdened. "You didn't just save the estate, Sarah," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He took her hands, his grip warm and strong. "You saved me. From that prison. I am free." "But the boy," she whispered. "The new Earl." "The boy," Alistair said, his face becoming serious, all traces of the cold Earl gone, replaced by a warm command, "will be brought here, today. He is my cousin. He is family. This house, this name, belongs to him. We will be his wardens. We will manage the estate for him. We will give him the education and the life he was denied." And us?" she asked, her voice small. "Us?" He smiled, a true, brilliant smile that lit her from the inside out. "We are Alistair and Serafina Blackwood, and my grandmother, bless her suspicious heart, left her trust not to the Earl of Harding, but to me, to Alistair Blackwood. We are, for the first time in our lives, Sarah, simply rich, and free, and together." Lady Honoria cleared her throat, her gruffness a poor disguise for her own emotion. "This is all terribly sentimental, but you have just saved the Blackwood name from the greatest scandal of the century. You, girl," she pointed her cane at Serafina, are a revelation. You may only be Mrs. Blackwood on paper, but you will always be the Iron Countess to me. Now, I shall have that brandy. The shock has been considerable. Do try not to make a mess of the drawing room." She swept from the hall, leaving them alone, the echo of her cane fading on the marble. Alistair and Seraphina were left alone in the grand drawing room. The threat was gone. The estate was safe. The debts were paid. They were free. Alistair turned to Seraphina. The Iron Earl was gone. The desperate man in the study was gone. All that was left was Ali. His eyes, so long cold and guarded, were now shining with a light she hadn't seen since they were children. "Sarah," he said, his voice thick. "Alistair," she replied, her voice soft. He crossed the room in 2 strides. He didn't stop. He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "You saved me," he whispered, his body trembling. "I was drowning, and you saved me." "We saved each other," she whispered back, her arms wrapping around his neck, holding him tightly. "You were my shield. I was yours." He pulled back, his hands framing her face. He looked at her, really looked at her, as the Countess, as the companion, as the girl from the orphanage. "That day in the ballroom," he said, "I was a desperate, cold man. I offered you a contract, a prison. I was a coward. I hid behind my title because I was afraid of what Mortimer would do. And I was afraid of this." "Afraid of what?" "Of this," he breathed. He leaned in, but he didn't kiss her. Not yet. He went down on one knee. On the floor of the drawing room, the victorious Earl knelt before his new wife. "My lady," he said, taking her hand. "My Countess. My Sarah. That cold proposal was a sham. It was a lie. Let me do this aright." He looked up at her, his love for her a blazing, undeniable fire in his eyes. "Seraphina Croft, you are the most intelligent, bravest, and most honorable person I have ever known. You were my only friend when I had nothing, and you are my only partner now that I have everything. I love you. I have loved you since I was 10 years old. Will you do me the profound honor of truly being my wife?" Tears were streaming down Seraphina's face. The joy she had thought stolen was here, brighter and stronger than she could have ever imagined. "Yes," she cried, pulling him to his feet. "Yes, Ali. Yes." He kissed her. It was not a cold kiss. It was not a kiss of business. It was 12 years of waiting, of fear and of hope, finally unleashed. It was the kiss of 2 orphans who had found their way home. The Tun was scandalized, then fascinated, and finally utterly devoted. The story of the Iron Earl and his brilliant, penniless bride became the stuff of legend. Lady Harding was no longer the grey mouse. She was the Iron Countess, the only woman in London who could match her husband, and the most formidable, respected hostess in the city. Their marriage, born of desperation and secrets, became the most envied love match of the age. In a world of cold transactions and brutal social rules, 2 people who started with nothing found everything in each other. They proved that true strength isn't about titles or gold, but about the courage to fight for the person you love. The Earl's cold proposal began as a desperate gambit, but it was his whispered name that unlocked a love strong enough to rewrite their entire lives. Thank you so much for listening to this story. What did you think of Seraphina's bravery? Did you see the final twist coming? Let me know your favorite part in the comments below. Your feedback means the world to us. If you enjoyed this journey of drama and romance, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories just like this one. Don't forget to share this video with a friend who loves a good twist. We have new stories coming every week, and you won't want to miss what happens next.